Driven to Fear, an ironic passage to my father's burial, March 19th, 2014. My father was cremated in Mississippi but was to be interned in the vault next to my mother in Maryland. In honor of this solemn and final tribute, my wife and I departed Cedar Rapids, Iowa in our little Ford Focus around 5:30 on an early March Tuesday night with the goal of driving to South Bend, Indiana. We would sleep, refresh ourselves, and then drive to Cleveland, where we planned to explore the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, stay the night in another hotel, and arrive in Maryland early on Thursday afternoon. It was a good plan, but Mother Nature had a different one that included a massive snowfall that must have begun just as we lay our heads down Tuesday night. I awakened at my usual ungodly hour and slipped down to the hotel lobby to have a banana, some coffee, and then to hit the fitness room while my beloved slept in until 7:30 or so. That was the plan, but as I looked out the window, I discovered that half a foot of snow had fallen in the 6 hours that had just passed, and that the wintry precipitation was just getting started. I completed a hurried strength and stretch routine in the tiny fitness room, hopped on a stationary bicycle for 15 minutes, grabbed a coffee for my beautiful bride, and headed up to our room just before 6. I greeted my sleeping spouse with low lights, low voice, and low expectations of an enthusiastic awakening. My expectations proved correct, but after I explained that we had to head out on the highway pronto because of the weather, Pat groaned, moaned, and then conformed to the change in plan. We were up, showered, breakfasted, and ready to hit the road, Jack, before the sun was above the horizon. Typically, my wife does at least 60% of the driving when we take long trips, but today was to be the exception. I am a more methodical, cautious, and patient driver than is my Celtic collaborator, and when road conditions are disagreeable, my less aggressive driving style comes in handy. Today was my day to take the wheel. That I should be a more cautious driver should come as no surprise because my father, Francis C. Kennel, was one of the founders of modern driver's education. When I could still hold up fingers to show how old I was, Dad purchased a new car that had equipped with the then optional seat belts. Risk analysis and avoidance were drilled into my prepubescent brain, and once I had my driver's license, Dad insisted that I take advanced driver training courses. If I had my druthers, I would have stayed put Wednesday morning and waited a few days for better driving conditions. But even though we had allotted extra time into our travel plans, I still felt compelled to take on the extra risk and keep to our travel plan, albeit a bit earlier than we had agreed. I removed the half foot of snow from my car, shifted the manual transmission into second gear, and pulled out of my parking space and into the unplowed parking lot. The roads in town were bad. The highway was worse. We had one lane that was relatively clear of ice and snow, but the other lane or two lanes were slippery, bumpy disasters whose function it was to lure unsuspecting speed demons with their siren song of speed. The speed limit was 70 miles per hour. We were usually going between 45 and 50, as were most of the other vehicles. A few folks seemed unaware that all speed limits included the provision conditions permitting as an unstated rule. I believe that most of the 6 dozen cars and trucks that we saw on the side of the road had drivers who were going too fast, not paying enough attention, or were making poor choices. Early in Wednesday's drive, I vetoed our plan for the Rock Hall of Fame, another day perhaps, but not today. I drove white-knuckled to Pittsburgh, where we decided to call it a night. Fortunately, the mountainous roads of Pennsylvania and Maryland were in far better condition the next day than the Ohio Turnpike had been on Wednesday. As I was driving, I couldn't help but think how ironic it would be if we were to have a collision or spin off the road on the way to my father's funeral. Luckily, someone was looking after me and we didn't experience the fate I feared. I like to think Dad was up there, giving me a helping hand.